Wait, where are we? Hi, there we are. Welcome back, Star Wars fans, to Coruscant Radio Underground. I'm Andrew, here as always with Marisha. And we're back. We're finally back.
You mean here is sometimes?
Here, sometimes it's just me. It shouldn't be always. But
here is usually. That works.
Okay. But we're back. We've been going a while, but we finally have a new Star Wars series to talk about.
It's true.
I finally had to just get with it and get back on here. Ignore you can't see most of the mess, but in the process of making some changes to the studio here to make it a little more functional. And for the next couple of weeks, it might be a little bit of a mess. In fact, it will probably be more of a mess as the next couple of weeks go. But
probably.
But then it'll be better.
It's true. That's how life works.
We think it'll be better.
It's definitely going to be better, love. Optimism. I know this is a foreign concept to an Andrew.
Look, optimism, I don't have a problem with optimism, but Star Wars is making it hard.
The world is making it hard. I used to be such an optimistic person, and then I realized one day I just turned into this old, cynical, moderately bitter person.
Look, I mean, here's the thing, and that's not my review of TheAcolyte at all. We're gonna give you we're gonna do our best to give you a good, fair review of our opinions here. But yeah, so I will say right off the bat that the thing that I dislike, I think, the most about this Star Wars series, the thing that kind of makes it not feel like Star Wars, please excuse the child blowing their nose right outside of my door here. Hopefully the move and changes will eliminate that. This is the least hopeful Star Wars we've ever gotten.
So far. Yeah, I think so.
Because there's no hope.
So here's
and now, granted, we're playing in a time where the Republic is about kind of beginning to go into decline to some extent. The Jedi will follow along and go into a decline that we will see culminate in the prequel era. Mm-hmm. But man, it's like taking a big chunk of what makes Star Wars and just throwing it off to the side.
I mean, it could still be very hopeful. It could just be going for a contrast later. Although, so to even just start, did you notice that, the title, the genre is sci-fi mystery?
I did. So that's a Disney problem. That is more than it's a Star Wars problem. Although someone at Lucasfilm, that's the thing. This is something I've been complaining about for a couple of years now with Star Wars, just in general, is that I don't even think that it's as much as some of the people involved don't understand Star Wars as gets thrown around a lot. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't know if they understand what genre they're writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've seen over the last few years with things like Willow coming out that mm-hmm. even a lot of the people trying to write fantasy don't really have a good grasp of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And that's really unfortunate because fantasy has always struggled. You've had comics and science fiction and fantasy, all things that struggled to find a place in an adult world.
Right.
And comics, managed to do it. And then movies brought that even further. Mm-hmm. The MCU in particular brought that well along and just made it totally mainstream. Mm-hmm. And then science fiction, was a kid's genre, mm-hmm. which was crazy because it never really was. It just had trouble gaining a footing. Science fiction was, and I will say it over and over and over again, even though I mostly prefer fantasy, especially in the vein of things like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Science fiction might be the most important genre culturally. Mm-hmm. as
Oh,
far
for
as the
sure.
way it has shaped and its ability to shape culture
Hmm.
without being so aggressive and like beat you over the head with things. It presents ideas, makes you think. Now that's another trait that a lot of sci-fi writers have lost.
Yeah.
There are still some, when Stargate was still being made, Stargate was still doing a really good job with that.
It's a
Uh,
good balance of kind of social commentary and, but still being, strange enough that it wasn't too on the nose.
the Orville did it extremely well,
Hmm.
where everybody knows the political side of everybody involved, but they still presented things in a way that felt like the show itself was saying, "Here's a problem.
Think about it.
Think about it." That's sci-fi at its best. That's
Hmm.
sci-fi. Why I say sci-fi is so important.
Hmm.
Um, but people forget that, and when we did Pillars, to be fair, when we did Pillars, Star Wars is on the science fiction and the fantasy list
Hmm.
because of what they are. It wasn't saying necessarily, because there's a lot of things on the list for both of those that are proto sci-fi,
Hmm.
proto fantasy, or even predate and things like even like nursery rhymes.
Hmm.
So it's talking fantasy, but Star Wars, even though it is, I think George Lucas called it science fantasy at
Hmm.
some point, which is what he meant by that was it is science fiction, but in a fantasy world.
Right.
It's a fantasy
Or a
world, and
fantasy in a science fiction world. And I think,
either way, but
yeah.
it's I would say science fiction in a fantasy world only because the world doesn't obey our laws of
Okay.
physics and things like that,
Yeah.
which is going to come into play in our discussion about this show, or maybe
Right.
more so a lack of discussion. There are a number of things in this series that are kind of have been the talking point of a lot of people.
Hmm.
They've been the let's tear down this show because someone died from a knife to the heart. Well, we're gonna get all upset about somebody getting stabbed in the heart. Oh, well, they survive lightsabers, but they can't survive getting stabbed in the heart with a knife.
Okay, in the heart is different than in the abdomen.
Also, it's a non-starter as an argument because yes, you would die if you get stabbed in the heart with a knife. They made a decision to have people survive lightsaber wounds. This is an unrelated argument.
Yeah.
Um, the character got stabbed in the heart with a knife. That's a non-starter as an argument. If you're using that as your argument, you're being disingenuous.
I mean, yes, obviously, getting stabbed in the heart with a knife is going to kill you. I don't
Right.
see why that's something to get offended about.
So if you're arguing from the point, the other big one that is is fire and space, and um, Star Wars has always done fire and space. Yeah, this is a little more flame than we're used to, but space in Star Wars, in space in particular, has never obeyed the laws of physics of our world.
Hmm.
It never has. Not in any way, shape, or form. Not from the way ships fly, like World War II fighters. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things, and that's in books, video games, going all the way back to the original movies.
Hmm.
Space in Star Wars has never followed the rules of physics in our world.
Yeah.
Luke, Leia, and Chewie walking around with just like these masks on in space in an asteroid. Yeah, it's inside a worm, but it's still out in the void of space. We have animals that live in the void of space.
Right.
Clearly, space in this world is not. And so I think if you're, and the third would be that, oh, it's heavy on female characters. And while it's all we're getting in Star Wars anymore is female characters. Yeah, we might be being a little heavy handed with that lately with Star Wars. But as far as judging this series as itself for what it is, fire in space, a character dying from being stabbed in the heart, and in a strong female character. Those are non-arguments.
I agree.
Total non-starters, we're not going to go any further into them here because they are not arguments for the viability of this series. And I would ask that if you're watching this and you also do this and you're making those arguments, to step back long enough to realize that there are legitimate complaints about this series. There are 100%. You are undermining your own argument when you use total non-starters like those 3 items as your argument for why this series is bad.
Yeah. Well, it's like beating up a straw man whenever the actual person is literally right there.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's literally, you can't make these arguments without it being a straw man argument.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. I feel in some ways it's like a little bit like the conversation around Rings of Power. It's like, there are things to not love about Rings of Power,
Yeah.
but not the fact that Galadriel fights.
No, that's straw man.
Yeah.
That's not, total non-starter as an argument. So I wanted to just clear those 3 things up right at the front. Not going to have anything to do with my conversation.
Yeah.
Even if I was like, I'd like to see some, it's not that we haven't had male leads. We have still continued to have male leads. Now, I will say that bringing Carrie-Anne Moss on and using her in all of your promotional materials and acting like she was going to play some sort of major role to kill her within the first
scene.
Yeah, first 8-9 minutes of the show, we killed that character. Why I have a gnat flying around my face in here, I don't know, but it's driving me insane.
Well, it's like, it's even worse than killing Sean Bean off in the first season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Right. Well, if you read the books, you knew that was coming, but.
Well, right.
But to go get an actor like Sean Bean, I think that's different.
No, but I'm saying, like, a lot of people are like, I mean, so now what? Like, his face is on every poster. Her face is on every poster, and like, they didn't kill her off at the end of the series, at the end of the season. They killed her off. Not even the end of the first episode, the beginning of episode 1.
So
like,
look, I'm gonna make some people mad here. I don't care anything about Carrie-Anne Moss as an actress. Like, she's very one note. She basically does the same thing in everything she's in. It was fun to bring her in for a martial arts
cameo
fight scene and a cameo. Look, she's a big name. It's very possible that she's in all that promotional material because that's what her contract said.
It's so kind of disingenuous.
It's still disingenuous.
Yeah.
You didn't need Carrie-Anne Moss for that scene. You could have done it with practically anyone. You didn't even need an actress. You could have done it with a stunt person, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you can use an actress because you want to put a face to it, but whatever. It doesn't affect the quality of the show. This is a nitpick that's kind of outside of me saying the show's good or not. Mm-hmm. It's very disingenuous to plaster a big name actress all over all your promotional material and kill her in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
And I say first 5, don't come argue with me on that. It was at least in the first 10. I don't know where it falls in there.
Very early.
First scene. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to clear those things out first because I don't think those are
not particularly relevant to them.
They're relevant in that they're the conversation that's out there in the ether right now. Mm-hmm. But they're not really relevant to is the series good or not.
Right.
And so I kind of want to address those and then set them aside.
Yeah. That's reasonable.
Because I don't want to argue. I'm not interested in joining in that fray. Mm-hmm. So I believe that those are all non-starters as far as is this show good or not discussion.
Yeah.
So just overall, general thought. Like, we saw first 2 episodes. Oh, one more thing I'm not going to cover. Sorry. One more non-starter. Yes, I'm aware of what is being said about the 3rd episode. Yes, I'm aware that if what is being said about it is fully true, it's probably not fully true. It's probably a partial truth that someone either doesn't understand or is really hyping it up to be a lot bigger deal than it is. But it might not be. I mean, look, I'll readily say it. I've been saying for at least a year that I'm terrified of what this series could do to the Star Wars fandom. If you watch my show, you know that my biggest problem at this point with The Last Jedi is what it did to the fandom.
Yeah.
I despise that movie just for what it did to the fandom.
Yeah.
The fandom was never like this unified, like perfect, thing, but
Right.
it made it worse. And
Yeah.
I don't think you can really like argue that it didn't.
And on purpose, a little bit.
On purpose, a little bit. Yeah. So I said at least a year ago that I was afraid this show would do the same thing. And all indications after 2 episodes is that's the road we're headed down. Now, some of that is preconceived notions.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's the fans. Some of that doesn't, whatever the show turned out to be.
Well, there are a lot of people that have gone into this with a preconceived idea. There are a lot of people that go into a series already to review it, not to watch for their enjoyment, but they know they're going to review it, and they already know what they're going to say before they've ever seen the first episode. They just have to look for things like fire in space and knives killing people to make their argument.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
I mean, based on all the hype around it, I didn't hate it.
No.
I didn't love it. There's a lot of things that in some ways I feel like whenever, we started a new Star Wars series, several years ago now, movie series, I was like, well, I mean, it depends on how it ends. And so, I mean, is Evil Twin the cleverest twist ever? No, but
it's not, but there may be more to it.
And there may. And I mean, I think that there could be some interesting directions that this story goes. And honestly, how I'm going to feel about these first 2 episodes is really going to be contingent on the direction the story goes. Like, there are things that I think definitely have potential. There are things that, are concerning, but it really just depends on how they continue to develop. Yeah. Honestly, I think how I feel about this now is going to be largely contingent on how the story continues to develop.
Right. So just kind of like, just straight up, like, what did you think the strongest element of the show was?
So currently, I do like, in spite of the fact that the whole twins thing is not totally novel or anything, I like the dark side and the light side thing that they kind of have going with Osha and Mia. Mia? No, what's her name? May, yes. With Osha and May, I feel like that has the potential to be a very interesting dichotomy, unless if May winds up pulling her sister down the dark path, and the whole story just ends bleak and hopeless, then I'm not going to love it. But if it continues to be an interesting, kind of duality, I think having the dark side and the light side duality is always an interesting dynamic.
Right. Yeah. So I did see someone, I don't remember who said it, so I'm sorry, but that, of course, the character that was on the outside of a ship doing work a droid's supposed to do was named Osha. But
yep.
So as far as strengths, I think overall, I think this show looks pretty good. Like it has a genuine Star Wars feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly in a way that some of our other shows haven't had, even Andor, which I didn't like Andor up until about the last 5 episodes are just incredible TV. Star Wars or otherwise, the last 5 episodes are just awesome. Prior to that, I still kind of feel like Andor is, and so Andor gets kind of a mid-grade from me, despite the last 5 episodes maybe being some of the best Star Wars TV, maybe the best Star Wars TV show we've heard. Yeah, Star Wars live action show we've gotten just in those last 5 episodes.
Yeah. Because the first episode was so boring.
But this does a really good job with a lot of the aliens. Oh, the cantina scene.
The kids were like, "Wow,
yeah,
that that is cool. It was very Star Wars. The cantina scene was just perfect.
I feel like there's a lot of channeling prequel era George Lucas going on in a lot of this. The wide shot of Coruscant, which honestly doesn't look very good. It looks like a video game, but that's kind of a general complaint with where CGI has gone.
As video games
are
starting
honestly,
to look more real.
When you just kind of take it for what it, at first glance, it's like, oh, it's Coruscant and there's the temple and all this. When you go back and look at still images of it, it honestly looks AI generated. There are quite a few things in this show. There are several visually that look like they were done by AI, and like some of the dialogue might have been AI written.
I mean,
it was either written by someone who's just not. I mean, the dialogue's lacking. For me, the dialogue is a weak point.
Yeah, but man, AI could have written some of George Lucas's dialogue.
100%. 100%. I mean, that's been a complaint about George Lucas, since 1977 is, as Mark Hamill says, you can't say this stuff, George. But the dialogue, there are some things, and it makes me wonder. It honestly makes me feel like all these strikes last year, everybody was fighting about AI taking their job, and then they turned around and started using AI to do their job. Which is an interesting use as a tool, but if you figure it out for them, they'll use it to take your job later. I promise you.
Yeah.
So,
although,
you let them use it as a tool and work the kinks out of it, and then.
I mean, it's coming. It's and I work in movies, and I can tell you, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's not going to take my job, probably, because people still have to wear clothes.
True.
But people who do rendering, VFX, a lot of that kind of stuff,
it will certainly reduce the number of people required.
And that's true.
And that's probably a large priority, because honestly, right now they have trouble getting enough people. That is an industry where a lot of people don't stay. The workers are not treated particularly well, and it is long, hard hours for months and months and months, and then you get laid off when you're done.
Right. Yep. And unfortunately, instead of paying VFX, and also several different groups of VFX workers have voted to unionize, which is going to be an even bigger push to replace them with robots.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really have anything to do with the show, but it's still a relevant conversation.
So yeah, my biggest like so far is that visually, it feels like I'm back in that galaxy far, far away. And so I appreciate it for that. Even a lot of the dialogue feels like stuff George would have written, even where I don't like it. Some of it is on the actors. Some of these actors. I don't like the Yord character. I think he's portraying what he's supposed to be portraying, though, and I think he's doing an okay job. Master Soul is probably the only character that I feel any sort of attachment to at this point. Like, anybody else could die, and I don't think I would care. If they killed him off, I'd be like, oh, you killed off your only good character.
I mean, I feel like OSHA has got some things going.
Yeah. I mean, I think OSHA could be a good character. I will say her flirting with the Jedi Padawan on the ship's a little weird. The Padawan whose name I can't remember. Who is Daphne King's character?
I don't even remember. I didn't notice her flirting with the Jedi Padawan.
I didn't notice it the first time I watched. The second time I watched it, I caught it. I was like, that's a little weird. Jackie Lon is Daphne King's character.
The one with the little spikes.
One of them. There's two that kind of have some crazy. It's the one that goes with Master Saul on this mission.
Okay.
That's kind of like never does anything wrong, and is like they kind of put her and Yord up there, and like Yord doesn't do anything right, and she does everything right.
She definitely seems to be the rule follower of the crew.
No, Yord is the rule follower. maybe to an extreme. Yord is a almost militant rule follower.
Yeah.
Yord is.
You feel like he could be a Nazi.
When he starts. He starts quoting, rules to Master Saul at one point. So like he's a very, very serious rule follower to some extent, but it may be pushing the rules past. This is the thing where we see the Jedi push past caring about people and
following
more
the
about
letter of the law for its own sake.
Well, so we get Master Vernestra later, who was the worst actor in the show so far.
Yeah, I didn't love
the makeup. Does not
makeup.
look good. It's the worst makeup. It's the worst. Like the others, I thought everything else looked good. Hers doesn't look good for some reason. I don't know what it is about it. It looks off. She's an incredibly unlikable character. I do think that that's, again, intentional. At least I hope it is. I hope this isn't a look Jedi bad story, as much as it is look, some of these Jedi are kind of losing their way.
Yeah.
Because that's where we're at in the timeline.
So this is only 100 years before prequels.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things I didn't like was we did the High Republic, which everybody, if you've listened to me, knows that I've struggled to get through any of those books. They're not just bad stories; they're badly written. And badly written by pretty decent writers. So I don't know what happened there. Yeah. Maybe hemming these writers into a group created world was not what they were used to or something. But it doesn't work for me. But yeah, so the High Republic, they originally said 500 years before. And then as we got closer and closer to the release of the books, we kept going, oh no, it's only like a couple hundred years before. And then it was like finally like, oh no, it's only 100 years before the prequels. And it's like, okay,
I don't bother. It's basically the same world.
Yeah. Well, it is.
They wear a lot more gold.
Yeah, which I don't love. I'm aware I think the costumes look good, so I don't want to knock the job done by the people that created those costumes. Or the artists, for that matter, the artists that created those looks for the High Republic books.
Yeah.
I think they look great. But it also bothers me a little bit, and I'm aware this is a point where we're going to see the Jedi kind of fall and lose their way and become more concerned with politics and bureaucracy than about people. But the Jedi dressing, these are monks, and dressing more opulently, showy.
For me, honestly, the main thing is I feel like there's kind of a concept. If you had made this 10,000 years earlier, sure. You only made this 100 years before the prequels. And the prequel era Jedi all wear the same, white or off-white, tunics and brown robes. So why in only 100 years have they completely changed their aesthetic? Because that's not the way the opulent societies work.
No.
Like Rome, you look at it, it gets more and more gaudy and then crashes.
Right, but they get more gaudy as they get more corrupt. Yes,
and that was kind of the
point.
So
we should have seen them get more opulent as we approached the fall of the Republic.
Yes. And like I said, if you wanted to go 10,000 years earlier, it's a completely different world. Sure, I'll buy it. But 100 years earlier, why have we know
the Republic has fallen several times. We could have just gone back and done one further back. Now, the High Republic is a whole new idea that I still believe was some sort of effort to condense the timeline. They didn't like this thousands and thousands of years timeline, so they wanted to smash everything down to a few hundred years. And it's like,
But why?
Yeah, because they did things like the hyper, in the High Republic books, like hyperspace not being fully understood and all this crap. And it's like, yeah, you're way too far forward in the timeline to be doing these story points.
Right,
Like these story points belong way, way further back.
Yeah.
Which is my fear of why they've never done the Old Republic
Mhm.
is because they basically it doesn't exist in the canon live action world anymore.
Right.
That maybe it exists, but it's not nearly as far back as
Yeah. I mean,
that, or we want to say, oh, there's the High Republic, or the Old Republic, but we've had total societal, cultural, trade relation collapse at some point,
mhm.
and basically hit a big reset button on the galaxy.
Yeah.
But then that begs the question of like, what happened? Like, what happened to groups like the Jedi during that time?
Right.
I don't mind the idea of groups of Jedi evolving totally differently on different planets.
Mhm.
And one thing I do like about this era is one of the things I've been saying needs to happen as the Order is rebuilt, whatever we do forward from the sequel trilogy, is I want to see I want to see different temples on different planets and them and ideas evolving independently of a central control.
Right. You want Protestant Jedi.
We've had Catholic
We've
Jedi,
had Catholic Jedi for a long time. We want Protestant Jedi, by golly.
right? But we used to have Protestant Jedi, and then we got Catholic Jedi. Like so, we
Yeah.
see this thing, and we have all these. So we're constantly finding old ancient temples
Mm-hmm.
and things. So at one point in time, there were these big temples where teachings weren't so centralized.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea that as the Jedi become more centralized, they become less Jedi-like. They lose their way. They become more concerned about the bureaucracy and politics. And so I want to see that as we go back. I want to see that fleshed out, and as we go forward, I want to see the Jedi move back towards a less centralized
Mm-hmm.
form of government.
I mean, I guess you could argue, like, again, just kind of from a history and a continuity timeline, you could have had some kind of movement, some kind of oh, what's the word? Um, focus on the spirit and not the flesh, and the what do they call those people? Ascetics?
I'm
I can't find the word. Dadgummit.
sorry.
Oh well, but you could have had some kind of movement towards less ornamented lifestyle that could result in all of our Jedi from the prequel era looking the same. But I feel like it's a little they're gonna, I don't know. I don't like having to assume that.
Yeah.
Like, because based on the information we already have, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right.
Like I said, I like the look.
Yeah. So that was my next question. As far as the look, like as someone who does costuming professionally, what did you think of just the costuming in general? Because I've seen a lot of people that are really knocking the costumes, and I don't see it.
No, I don't either. I really like the costumes. I specifically liked Endara. Was her name? Was Master Endara the first scene?
Yes.
Hers I really liked. I thought it was much more of a traditional Jedi look.
It was more subdued. It had the pleats and stuff. I like that look.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Whenever I saw her, I was like, ooh, this is the direction we're going. I like this because it's like really similar, but a little bit different.
Yeah.
I like the costuming. I think it's interesting. Now, honestly, it's not. I don't find it to be like super opulent. It's more this. There's a lot more there's a lot more gold colors. It's not like it's
not like this actually gold plated.
Exactly.
Everything. Yeah.
It's not actually. It's just a different color palette, really more than a. It's not. It doesn't have to necessarily be obvious. Like Shaolin monks wear red, right?
True.
So it doesn't have to be brown and white to be.
Yeah. I think again my problem is what we already discussed, that it changes too fast. That the people writing this stuff are looking at 100 years as a long time, but culturally 100 years is relatively short, especially for a thousands of year old
exactly
culture.
I mean, yes, the last 100 years of American society, everything's changed drastically. But you look at, Rome, you look at Middle Ages, for most of human history, from 100 years to the next, things are pretty darn similar.
Cultures rise and fall. Like whole cultures rise and fall across 100 years. 100 year
Oh, for
gaps. So,
sure. But as far as how people dress and how they live,
yeah, it doesn't change much.
doesn't change much, or
But I
really
mean,
hasn't
like,
until the
okay,
past
so
300 years or
right,
so.
but even in the last 150 years, 200 years, yeah, women's fashion changes a lot, although it kind of runs in circles. Men's fashion hasn't, in the last, I mean,
The last 100 years or so, men's fashion has kind of done this.
yeah, in a fairly small circle.
Yeah,
But I mean, but suits.
Mm-hmm.
Suits haven't changed much. That uniform that men wear to work, it's
Mhm.
been pretty consistent.
Yeah,
They change things like the ties and stuff.
yeah, how
Belts.
short their pants are.
Yeah.
But even the jeans and t-shirts things has kind of been around since the 1880s.
Yep.
It just different, it's sometimes the function of used to this was, your jeans and t-shirt was like a, blue collar worker
Mhm.
uniform. Now it's, more people's everyday go-to, but
Yeah.
In general, yeah, so that's my thoughts on the costumes.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page that we like them,
Mhm.
but we don't necessarily buy the change in the 100 year gap.
Right. Like why so drastically different?
And then went the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it went the wrong direction, exactly.
All right. So we've covered most of my first page of stuff. Vernestra, I don't think. I mean, I didn't like anything about the character. Now, and I will readily admit that I think, and I think I already said this, but I think that we're not supposed to like some of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yord and Venestra are basically everything wrong with the Order at this point.
Right.
Saul is he's a precursor to
Qui-Gon.
to Qui-Gon Jinn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's definitely that type of Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and he's still very much concerned with people, the Force, and just doing the right thing in general.
Mm-hmm.
Where Vernestra is kind of like, okay, fine, go do it, but keep it quiet because we don't want people to know what's going on.
Right. She's more concerned about the optics of things than the morals of them.
Right. Little things that bugged me. So they picked up all those criminals that got off that ship. They all got off in escape pods, but then they have to argue whether to send someone all the way back out there to check the wreckage.
I mean, maybe the escape pods got a long ways away. Maybe they got little boosters going to hyperspace.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But I thought that was a continuity problem.
Yeah. There's probably a note somewhere where a script supervisor was like, "I said this didn't work, was overridden."
There's another thing. Like, I want to know what you thought about the line. So we see Master Saul say that May, the twin sister to Osha, died. He saw her die.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he finally catches up with Osha, she says May's alive, and he doesn't hesitate to say, "I believe you." I don't think it's necessarily a problem with the story. It feels a little too easy.
Yeah.
Like we were just blowing through this quickly, and we didn't have a moment for him to digest it.
Yeah. I mean,
but also in a way it shows his faith in this Padawan that he clearly cares about.
Yeah. I mean, I show up at a wreck, and my kid's in the driver's seat, and she said I wasn't driving. Okay, I mean, I know her. Something has happened.
Yeah.
Like, I know her. She's not. All the evidence in spite of the evidence, I'm probably going to believe her until I get proof otherwise.
Yeah. Now, I do think that they thought the twin idea was going to be more impactful than it was. But I think I wasn't in there when the kids watched it, but it sounds like even the kids kind of let out a groan when they went for the evil twin
So we were kind of
storyline.
talking about it, and I'm like, I feel like I said I don't feel like she's like she's lying. I think like she really couldn't pull that even pull she was wielding the force with real ease earlier. She's either got some kind of like dual personality going on, she's got some other kind of consciousness in her head. She's like there's something going on. And one of the kids says, yeah, either that or she's got an evil twin. Ha, wouldn't that be terrible?
Yeah.
And then
So,
so sure enough when they're like May's alive, she's like, oh.
right. I think there were other options there, and it might wind up. I'm not going to knock it too hard yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of thing you come back at the end of the series and judge whether it was the
Mm-hmm.
right choice or not.
It wasn't super clever. I
But
mean,
it's not clever.
it's
Now
been
the clever bit is if that she really did die, and what we're seeing is either some sort of resurrected or some sort of
mm-hmm.
other being that has taken the form of her sister
Mm-hmm.
or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there are a clever twist. I thought where we were headed initially was that the dead twin had basically bonded to her sister.
Mm-hmm. Her color.
That the spirit had bonded
Yeah.
to the sister. So basically, you still had both sisters' consciousness
Yeah.
fighting over this one body.
Mm-hmm.
But they clearly didn't go that way. I do appreciate that since they did go the evil twin route, that they didn't drag it out till like 3/4 of the way, and they go, "Oh, by the way, she has a twin sister." Like that second, oh, what is the movie Glass Onion, whatever the Knives Out, the
Yeah.
second Knives Out movie.
It was Glass Onion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they pulled the mystery hinged completely on a twin that we didn't have any indication ever existed before.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get all the way to the end, and the twist is that she has a twin sister. And it's like, you can't murder mysteries, you can't pull things that you didn't feed us along the way out to make your twist.
Right.
The whole idea of the murder mystery is that you get to try to figure it out as it goes. You can't throw a whole extra wrench in the mix at the end.
Yeah.
So other little things. I'm getting into a lot of things that irked me about it, but I feel like there was some continuity problems, and again, they're stemming from this idea that 100 years is a long time. But the Trade Federation, they looked good. Maybe like the best we've seen them done yet in live action.
Mm-hmm.
But this group that relies almost completely on droids for anything and everything is hiring people to go out on the hull of the ship and do repairs. 100 years from now, they're using droids for everything. They're the most droided up group in the galaxy. So I was like, well, I don't even have a problem with people doing the repairs on the outside of the ship. It just seemed like the Trade Federation was an odd choice for that, given their affinity for droids.
Yeah. But also, I think the idea is that people like an idea of their lack of regard for human life. Like a droid is too valuable to send out there. Let's send out a person instead.
Maybe so.
And that definitely tracks with Nemoidians.
So kind of going back through characters. So Yord, we've talked a lot about Yord a little bit. Yord because he is the way he's more hung up on the rules and stuff. Do you think Yord is a risk with maybe getting a little caught up in the dark side during this? He's very quick. He's way too fast to walk in and use mind control on someone.
Pull his lightsaber out every
Pull
time.
his lightsaber out every time he's given the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless somehow we get this twist along the way and Yord's the guy and the Yord is our Sith. But I don't think that's where they're going with it.
No, unless, yeah, I don't think so.
Our Sith's an idiot, by the way.
Okay.
Our Sith gives this long speech that I wrote down and lost. Mm-hmm. This whole thing about the Jedi live in a dream they believe and everyone that they believe everyone shares. If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail. Steel or laser are no threat to them, but an Acolyte kills without a weapon. An Acolyte kills the dream. I feel like they felt like they said something really clever that's actually just word soup.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people like that aren't actually as smart as they think they are.
Right, but I don't think that was the intentional. I don't think that was the intention there, was to make him sound stupid.
Yeah.
But he gives this like speech that's like, okay, and then he ignites his lightsaber for no reason. It's like, okay, our Sith are weird now. I don't like, and granted, this is something where we have Sith open, you know, Sith just like turn on their lightsaber, like at the end of Solo with Darth Maul just igniting his saber for no good reason other than to show he has it. I don't know. So far I'm not all in on the Sith character.
We just have so little information on him.
Yeah. But let's see, like what else?
I mean, he definitely, like the whole, like, you gotta kill him without a weapon. Like, that's the sort of thing that cults come up with, though.
Well, they are a cult.
I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we have like this weird off the wall thing that's like we're making sort of the tenet of our.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very culty thing, you know. So
yeah, no, that's true. And like I said, you know, the Sith, if you want to be real technical about it, they are a cult. They're a cultish offshoot of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And I do think we're going to see, there was talk of witches and some other things in here. So we may see some other types of Force users, which is where I think a lot of the episode 3 stuff that I don't even want to get into until after it happens may play in.
Yeah. I haven't heard anybody talking about it yet, which is just fine. I'd rather just watch it.
So I guess our big story at this point, though, is that these Jedi that she's killing did something pretty terrible.
Yeah. And you're kind of like, well, she must just be blaming them for something until the guy drinks the poison.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really don't like the suicide angle on that.
Yeah.
Largely because I find that the people that scream the most that Star Wars is for children are the ones most likely to do things like put sex and now suicide in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we needed to go that route with that. I mean, obviously we have a guy that has he's taken a vow. I don't remember the name of the vow. It's something that's the Barish vow, which is basically just where he, you know, it's a vow that they just are no longer doing Jedi things or even functioning as a Jedi. They're just alone with the Force until they figure out what their purpose is. And it seems like he's just literally been waiting for someone to show up and kill him.
Yeah.
or at the very least for someone for him to show up and apologize to before he offed himself.
Well, because he says, "I've been waiting for you" when she shows up.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm assuming that they're gonna have to show it to us, and it's gonna have to be bad.
Yeah.
I don't like so far most of the Jedi. Saul's the only likable Jedi, other than maybe the Padawan. I feel like they kind of went the early first season Ahsoka route with that Padawan though, and made her a little bit unlikable.
Yeah.
Hopefully that I hope they'll change that. I'm glad that Daphne Keene is doing Star Wars, and so I hope the character ends up being a good character. But they definitely made her unlikable.
Yeah.
But Master Endara, who we see first, Master Torben, the one that commits suicide, they're both like Endara sits there and watches all the people she was just sitting at a table with just get thrown all over the bar before she even stands up to intervene.
Yeah.
It's like you're letting all these people get the crap beat out of them or killed for something you did.
Right.
So, like, we've got a problem with that.
And that's like a classic, like, Jedi trope. Come in and hurt people and, find out who the Jedi is. Yeah. That's like a recurring thing in Star Wars, literature especially.
Yeah.
And she's just like, yeah.
Well, she already knew who the Jedi was. Like, she knew who she was there hunting down. But Endara just sits there and lets all that happen. And basically, everybody else is on the ground before she intervenes.
Yeah.
So, and I get it. We're trying to make these Jedi. I just hope that we're not just trying to make all Jedi look bad. I really hope that's not where we're going with it. We clearly still have good Jedi in the Order all the way through the prequels. They're not all caught up in the bureaucracy that the Jedi become.
Yeah, and though, there's been an increasing amount of anti-Jedi dialogue in the Star Wars fandom.
100%.
And I don't love it.
Yeah.
But I hope if that's the direction this show's going, I'm going to be really disappointed.
I really hated the kind of weird fighting pose and then attack me with all your strength line. Was a little cheesy even for Star Wars. I mean, at least they did have everyone in the bar reacts by laughing at her.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cheesy. What else? What are your thoughts on?
I mean, I don't know if there's really anything else particularly.
So we've set up Osha. Osha is she's basically it's basically Anakin's story. She lost everyone and everything. She struggled with attachment to the people she lost. She started her training too late.
I really hope that they don't send her down the dark side, if for nothing else, because we have told that story.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear that exact same story again.
I did find we had a couple of things, and when Master Saul's teaching the class with the younglings, and he's got this, and then this is what comes even back from the trailer, where one of the students says, "I see fire," and he stops. So I think that she's maybe seeing the incident of whatever happened.
But like a good teacher, he brings it around to
yeah. But he legitimately seems to be the only one that has sort of dealt with internally with what happened. But whatever it was has caused him to have maybe too much of an attachment to Osha. So I'm curious to see where all they're going to go with that. What else? Any other thoughts?
I mean, I think that's I mean, nothing else really off the top of my head.
It's good to see. I wasn't sure what I thought about the look of the Wookiee that we see at the end of episode 2, but I am glad that Junus is back.
Oh, is that who that
Yeah.
is? Okay.
He was great. We got to see him talk at DragonCon a couple of years ago. He's fantastic.
Mhm.
He should be. If there's a Wookiee involved, like just bring him in, let him do it.
Mhm.
He basically just adopted everything that. Oh, I'm gonna blank.
Yep.
But he's done a really Peter Mayhew. He basically adopted everything that Peter Mayhew had created as Wookiee behavior and culture and all this. So he really has been one of the better things, recurring things about Star Wars lately. I did find it interesting in the fights. What do you think about the fights using especially the first fight with Trinity from the Matrix, where we very much did sort of fantasy martial arts style fighting.
I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was a little like we haven't seen that in Star Wars. I don't mind it. It was good. It was well done. It was a well done fight. I also don't really have any issues with the Jedi moving in ways that don't necessarily look natural to a bystander.
Yeah.
In fact, the books, you go back to the original books, and they describe lightsaber fights as like almost too fast to even see what's happening. So I don't mind it. I thought it was good. If the fight scene had been bad, I'd have probably been more irritated about it. But I thought they did a good job with the fight scene.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about the fights, both with Saul and with Indara, is that May constantly tries to grab their lightsabers off their
Yes, I've noticed that. Like they made a point of that.
Yeah. So I'm curious if they'll give us more, if that's just she's reaching for it because she wants to kill them with their own blade, or if there's something to her reaching for that saber. But I think that, I mean, there's obviously a lot. It's always hard to do. We're a week out from me seeing it for the first time. You just saw it yesterday for the first time, but unless you can think of anything else, it's always hard to do 2 episodes at once because it's like reviewing a movie.
But I think we've got a pretty good idea of, like I said, it's just all going to be a matter of where it goes.
Yeah. So I know I might have been a little hard on it, but I want to say, so not something we always do, but kind of something I wanted to do today on this. At this point, how would you grade? How would you grade this episode? And I don't mind going first if you want me to.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So I think there are things that need to improve. There are things that they could flesh out that will make me feel better about the story as we go forward. But I don't hate it. It's not the worst. It's better than some other Star Wars series we've gotten at least 2 episodes in. That doesn't mean it won't dive off the cliff tomorrow.
Right.
But I would probably give it like a C+. So like I would say I like it. I would give it a pass. But I think it needs to fix some things.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a B.
Okay.
It's like it could be better. But
yeah. So,
I'm gonna keep watching, and I'm not just gonna keep watching because it's like I gotta talk about it. But like I'll watch it tomorrow when it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, you just didn't watch the first episode when it came out because you weren't at home.
That's true.
But so yeah, a C and a B. So I would say our combined, we're firmly at calling it average.
Yeah. C's get degrees. It's passing. It's passable.
Yeah. So I think that's where we're gonna leave off, and we will be back tomorrow with maybe even tonight with a preview of tomorrow as far as our expectations and where we think it's headed. So, Marisha, do you have anywhere anybody can find you?
you can find me occasionally on Instagram. I have a couple of Instagram accounts. Which one am I going to pitch from this? Well, I don't remember the other one, so you can go see my cosplay Instagram account, princesses_and_padawans.
Yeah, should be some stuff on there. We got Mississippi Comic Con coming up in just under 2 weeks, and Dragon Con in about 3 months. A little less than 3 months.
The kids have quite the ambitious
Yeah,
plans.
you better get started on them.
Yeah, that's what I told them. They're big enough now, they help.
All right, so you can find me running the Twitter account for this show at crew_podcast, that's CRU_podcast, or you can find our parent account for everything at sci_fictionary. Coruscant Radio Underground is part of the Science Fictionary and proudly part of the Red 5 Network. You can find all the rest of the Red 5 Podcast Network at bio.link/Red5. That's going to do it for this episode. Let us know in the chat what you thought, and let us know what you thought about the show. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.